job, Matt.
Good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session for Wednesday, January 24th, 2024. It's 10:04 a.m. My name is Ty Mentzer, Chair of the Board. We have Vice Chair Commissioner Fournier, Commissioner Edwards, and Commissioner Mejia on Zoom. And are we expecting Commissioner Klaus? Not sure on that. Hopefully she will join us. For virtual public attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. The session is to last until 11 a.m. related to revenue update and informational session. And I'm gonna ask the interim county manager to tell us what we're doing.
Great, okay. So good morning, and this is your annual kickoff on what revenue may be available to the county that we are not currently collecting. As Nicole, I'm sure will outline, today's purpose is to let you know what you could do. And then we will be looking to the board on what you would like to do, if anything, in moving forward to obtaining new revenue from sources that we don't currently tap. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nicole and take it away.
Okay, so Nicole Martinez, Budget and Fiscal Manager, and beside me is
Jennifer Smith, Budget Analyst.
And just to echo what the interim county manager said, today we're going to be discussing revenue opportunities. We're going to do an overview of all the opportunities available to counties. So I'm going to bring up MRSC guide. Then we're going to dive down into specifically what the county is currently collecting and then where there's opportunity to grow. So we have an hour, but this will be very informative and it's just informational today. So I'm going to share my screen, which is the MRSC guide. And the reason why I'm sharing this is just to let you know where the revenue opportunities are and where we can get all the information on what the stipulations are behind those type of revenues that we're looking for in the county. So give me 1 second to share. And so what I'm just bringing up is Google here. And so this is the revenue guide for Washington counties. It's through the Municipal Research and Service Center. They have a wealth of information concerning all the revenues available to counties. I use this along with our RCW and other statutes to make sure that we are getting all the revenues that we need for the county. And so this is just a quick overview of where to find this revenue guide, where I'm getting the information that I'm going to present today. A lot of the information I pulled directly from here. So in the beginning of this guide, the way it works is there is a page here that talks about the history of some of the revenue sources. It goes into the changes over the revenue, when it was originally put in place, and then any amendments to those revenues. So this is very helpful to let us know what has changed when we're going into the new budget cycle. It breaks down the revenue sources by real estate and sales tax, lodging and REIT, as you can see here. And then after you go through here, which I use a lot, is the table of contents where it breaks it down again into property taxes. And it gives a really good in-depth discussion about property tax, as it is a very complicated area to discuss and how that is formulated. So I just wanted to share the revenue guide, and it looks like
I would like to add, so you see some of the topics there. When you say to us, how much can we do in a levy shift? This is where we look. We look at this and go ahead and click on levy shift. And there's the information all about levy shifts. It says what we can and can't do, how much we can shift, what the restrictions are, anything that we need to know. It has some of the mechanics, not all of them, but there's very detailed. And then could you go back to the table of contents, Nicole?
back up like this. 1 second, here we go.
Yeah, go down now. If you were to ask us about, here's all the information you might want to know about the housing and services sales tax. So if you click on that, same kind of thing. So we rely very heavily on this MRSC guidance. We don't stop there. If the board, you know, is asking something very specific, we do quite a bit of research. We do, read the RCWs, we check in with our attorneys, to ensure that we're using these funds in a proper way. So, but if you ever want, to read it, how many pages? So how many
Two
hundreds?
hundred and one.
201 pages of
I fall asleep on
information
page
about
like 4.
revenue. Yep, we rely heavily on this
Yeah.
guide, and you have us, so you don't have to read the guide.
It's not a front to back page reader, it's like a reference
It's
manual.
not, it's on a topic basis, so,
Light reading at night.
yeah, I've read the whole guide, and I think,
Sure,
Nicole, and possibly Jennifer has, you have not
I've,
read the
I've,
whole
I've
thing?
dipped into areas, topic
toes are
areas.
wet.
I've read it. So, anyway, it's an amazing resource, and we just wanted you to see this resource. Should you, ever wonder,
These are
you know,
mine
where
from
you
the
can
previous
put
meeting.
something
Sorry,
up, but
right
the best
here.
thing to do is ask Nicole.
So then, with that said, this is a 201 page document. So what I did was to begin to summarize some of the information on here that is pertinent to our discussion today and for budget cycles. And so what I did is, if you look in what you have in front of you, and I'll also bring on the screen, there are two packets. One is a blue packet. It has like a blue line across it. And then right behind it is a workup. It's more like a one pager. And I'm gonna stop sharing so that I can bring this up for those viewing online to see. It says Thurston County Revenue Opportunities. As soon as this pops up, I will share again. Okay, and so the reason why I'm bringing this to your attention is the first few pages, I went and just summarized, and so these are not my words, these are words directly from MRSC, but I wanted to put it in like a little condensed form. It's still 7 pages. And so what this does, it just gives you an overview of some of the revenue that's available to the county in the 2 specific areas. So one of them is property tax, and the other is excise tax, and so our biggest one is sales tax, excuse me. And so this is just a summary of property tax and sales tax from the guide. And this might help just a little bit when we start discussing some things as a quick refresher. The MRSC also lists in the beginning of the manual key considerations for evaluating revenue sources. So I added those here. I thought those were a good thing to look at and to have at your fingertips when you're looking at some of these revenue sources and which ones might be something that you're interested in pursuing. I won't go into this document, word for word, but I just wanted to let you know that I did put this together, and if you wanted to be able to find something quickly, this might be a little bit of a resource, especially when it comes to property tax and all the moving pieces. Okay, so then I'll stop sharing this, and then I'll move over to the master sheet, I'm calling it. It is a 7-page, 11 by 7 document with a blue header on top. It says Thurston County Revenue Opportunities. And again, I will stop sharing so that I can bring that up. Okay, and here it is. And so, in line with MRSC, I've been through all of that entire manual, pulled out all the revenue sources, and compared them to what we receive here in the county. And so in this 11 by 17, 7-page document in front of you are all those revenue sources. I have identified as some of the headers here are what that revenue source, the title of it is, what the allowable amount is by statute, what we currently are having in 2024, our rates for that, if there's any capacity for the county to collect more, what law or statute governs that, and of course, there's more information in MRSC, so this is very condensed, but this is a good highlight. The uses of that revenue source, where that revenue source sits, what fund, so if it's in the general fund or a restricted fund, that's listed there as well. I have a column here also for comments and some recommendations as I summarize some of the information from MRSC and also what we have in the county. And then the last 2 columns here are what we collected in 2022 and then year-to-date 2023. I know that we are in 2024 fiscal year. However, the year has not closed for 2023. It won't close until March. And so there are still some accruals and things that need to happen before all the revenue is collected in that year. So you might see a little bit of a difference, and that's because it just hasn't been finalized.
So
I'll pause there.
anything on this chart that has yellow is a place where there's capacity, and we're about to talk about those areas in just a minute. Any place without the yellow in the available county revenue column, we're collecting at our maximum, or the county is not eligible to receive. But for every revenue stream where we're receiving money, you can see where it goes and what it needs to be used for.
Yep, and the pages are separated by headers, so you'll have property tax at the top, and if you scroll or turn to the next page, it'll be retail sales and use tax, and lodging tax, other revenues, real estate exercise tax, other excise tax, and it goes on and on. At the bottom, there's department fees, charges, and reimbursements. This area here, I would say, is a work in progress. So this is not all of the fees that we collect here in the county, but I did want to list some of them so that they are here. And if there's anything that you specifically want us to dive into, we'll do even more research. And as I continue to stay here with the county, I'll keep updating this section and make sure it's most up to date.
What page are you on?
So this would be, when I'm talking about the departments, that's pages 6 and 7. So you'll see there's information about the name of the source, but it doesn't have as much information as the major sources above. If there's anything in there that you're missing or you would like to know more about, I could definitely dive into that and follow up. So I know that's a lot of information to present because there's a lot of pages there and a lot of data. But I'd like to, if I may, jump into a summary, and that's the green sheet.
Green sheets.
Yes.
Move to green sheets.
And so what the summary sheet, the green one is it is the blue sheet, but I have taken away any of the columns or rows that did not have a yellow field, did not have available capacity for the county. So for instance, say it was, let me think of one.
REIT.
Yeah, so for instance, like REIT
REIT
or our
one.
sales tax, we are already collecting the full capacity of that. There is no availability to add more revenue into the county. And so that won't be on the sheet. The ones on this sheet are where there is availability. And so I'm gonna turn my screen here. And then also accompany the green sheet is a packet of Word documents. The first one says current expense fund levy. And so what I have done for the vast majority of these yellow buckets here on the green sheet, there is a small write-up, and it is just a summary from the guide, the revenue guide. If there's any of these revenue sources that you want us to look more into, I would develop this one pager here, maybe a couple pages, and add more revenue analysis and things like that to it to help facilitate the conversation.
Rental car sales tax
Yeah, it's,
to only be
we
used
could
for
talk
public
about it.
sports facilities activities.
right, and we have no idea how much it would actually
Yeah.
generate, so,
And to determine what that would generate,
that would probably be
Word.
more than
Yeah.
it, would generate,
but
yeah.
it's interesting.
It's very interesting, all the small things that are available that the county does not.
Transportation Benefit District. So we have one established that we've never exercised any authority on.
Exactly.
Now you're talking.
So let's go down the list, and you're going to, I think it will
Did I jump the
quickly
gun?
become evident which ones are worth pursuing, and then from you, which ones are you interested in the budget team doing more work on? So, starting at the top.
So if we're starting at the top, we're looking at our property tax, our levy. So the first one is our current expense, our general fund levy. So this is our primary source for property tax for the county. The revenues are unrestricted, they go into the general fund. The maximum levy capacity is $1.80. We are currently at about 77 cents. And so there is capacity of about $1.03. To be able to get up to that $1.03 would mean instituting a levy lift. And so in your packet there's a lot of information about a levy lift. If we were to go that route,
Require a vote of the people.
yep, it would require a vote of the people. It needs voter approval. So I even have that in the notes. It's like the third to last column there. And I also have an estimated amount if you were to levy all of that based on the certified values that we use to set the 2024 levy amount, that we would generate about $61.7 million. And again, it would be for any county purpose if we were to do that.
You have something to say about that? No?
I guess I'll just, Chair Milo.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess I'll just say if, I'm interested in this in the future, especially as we start conversations about a long-term courthouse and kind of seeing that. I think that information will be useful to the board at that time.
And just like any other revenue stream that allows for general purposes, if you were to go to the voters with a proposition for a general fund levy lift, you can make it very narrow. So
Narrow as in
What we can
uses?
yes. So for example, if you were to go to the voters and say, we'd like to have the voters approve a levy lift for paying for a new courthouse,
Or a new campus,
you could
whatever.
write the resolution in a way that would restrict any funds from the lift to payments for the courthouse. And then there's all kinds of other restrictions. If you're using it for bond payments, Thurston is the only county that can use it for bond payments for
So you would have to
25
pass a bond
years.
to get the money, and then you'd have to pass the levy
No,
lift
see,
to
and
make the
that's
bond payments?
difference. The other thing you can do, it's still a property tax, but it's not related to the general levy, is you could go out for voter approval of, unlimited general obligation bonds. That's different. If you do that, then the voters are actually approving the bond issue.
And then
And,
then the money
and a
comes in from their
willingness to
vote.
pay. And that amount of property tax would be over and above the levy.
Okay, you're talking
That's why
about
it's
a limited
You're talking
government
about-
obligation bond?
Yep.
Where we do it councilmatically, and then we don't have the funds, and then we have to find them.
And you would never do the bond before you had the funding stream. You would want the levy lift approved by the voters before you ever went to issue bonds. Otherwise, how would you pay for them?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you're passing a vote, hoping that the other vote passes, and that's,
Don't, you're passing, you would be asking the voters to approve a levy lift.
yes, and then you got the money, and then
And then we
you
talk about a bond,
councilmatically approve. Okay.
just like we did in the public safety sales tax.
Yes.
The voters approved the tax. Now we're chatting about when we go forward with the bond to be able to get the facilities. Same steps.
Yep. After the bond is paid off, does that levy money disappear?
It depends on how you structure the levy. Some levies are time limited and some are permanent. It all depends on how you structure the resolution.
What's our cap for a councilmatic bond?
Well, we've got bond council coming to do bond 101, but the cap is 1.5% of the total property value in Thurston County, and I just looked that up a couple days ago.
Finance
Do
committee.
you remember how much it's like 700 million
Some
or,
But
absurd
then our
number
debt-
that we
100
could never-
million.
Our
dollars.
existing debt comes into play too then, right?
yeah, about 140 million.
Okay,
Way under.
Just
okay.
way under the debt capacity. Yeah.
All right.
All right.
So.
Sorry.
No, that's what we're here for. So, the next, I'm gonna say 3 or 4 here, in this sheet before us are, levies that come out of the general fund. So for instance, this county, hospital maintenance levy, it would take away from your amount in your general fund for all purposes if you were to earmark it and go for this levy. But you could go up to 50 cents, per thousand, and it would only be for hospital maintenance. It would need, it doesn't need voter approval, but you would need to have a public hospital district to be able to do
We
this.
don't have a hospital, right?
No. So, but it's there. I wanted to make sure that I was transparent in what's available in MRSC. So the next one is the County Lands Assessment Fund levy. That one can be up to, 125 there. And this, you would have to have a drainage district, which we do have. It does not require voter approval, but it would come out of the general fund levy. And I do have estimates there too, as well as what that would be. But it would be restricted to drainage and, drainage improvements. The next is the River Improvement Fund. This is up to 25 cents. This would be restricted to flood control maintenance. It could also be used for the comprehensive flood control management plan. It doesn't need voter approval. Again, this would be taken from the general fund levy if you were to consider that.
Which means what? I mean,
The
it means
capacity
you
of the
can't
levy.
actually get, it's not any extra money.
It's not extra money.
It's not extra money.
You're just
it's
limiting
something
yourself
you
for the
can do.
money you already have.
It's a new
Right.
pie slice that just gets designated somewhere else essentially.
We already have the authority in the general fund to fund river improvements if we want. So why would you?
Yes, you do. Why
so
would you?
Why would you do something like that?
Some counties might want to do this. I don't think that it's a good idea, but we're putting before you all
Yep.
options you have.
The next there is the Veterans Assistance Fund, and so this is a must. We have to do this by statute, and we do. However, there is capacity, because you could go up to 27 cents, and we're at 0.01125. It would be restricted to the Veterans Assistant Fund, and in the annual estimated amount, if we were to go all the way up to the total capacity, it would be about a $15 million, generation.
So we do the minimum, as I'm sure you know, and you could do more, but this is our, part of what we've talked to the legislature about. We have no incentive to do more because it just decreases the amount of general fund that you have available to do all the other things that the county needs to do with general fund money.
Is this the exact same fund that we kind of struggle with trying to get the right programmatic elements to spend it anyway?
Yes, at this time.
Yes.
So again, not recommending that you do this, but showing
We've
you that
argued
it's
too,
there.
we had a bill last year, we spent quite a bit of time promoting it, to take these pieces out of the general levy. Then we could increase them and it would be additional revenue and not affect general fund. And we'd have an incentive to do that to support veterans, but it got further than it had gotten in the past, but it didn't quite get there.
Right. That's exactly right.
So, then I'll just keep going, you let me know
Yep.
if I should stop. Okay, so county road levy.
Unless a commissioner wants to, really talk about one and sees it as like, very interesting, just keep going.
Gotcha, thank you. County road levy, the available amount is $2.25. Currently, we're at about 91 cents. It would be restricted to the county roads. It does not need voter approval. If we were to go up to the full capacity, we're at $37.7 million is estimated, and again, would be for county road purposes. And this is all based off of certified values that was used for citing in 2024. The
So
next,
that's just it's a councilmanic property tax?
No, that is a levy lift that has to go to the voters. That brings you up to your, you could do as high as the highest lawful levy, but
It says does not need
it does
voter
not,
approval.
yeah.
it,
County road levy,
county road
under notes,
levy,
does not need voter
absolutely.
approval, regular levy, maximum of 225 per 1,000 for the,
No, it has to go to the voter like any other levy lift.
I'll double check the MRSC, but that's what
It's a
I
levy
have.
lift.
Well, not the,
further,
it says it right here. It says that the maximum levy rate is $2.25, but county legislative authority may divert some revenue for shifting.
That's for shifting.
Right.
That's not what we're looking at.
If I pull up the guide right now, I will do that.
We're looking at the county road levy where they've
Yes.
got capacity.
Not the levy shift.
That is correct. Let's find it.
Any levy increase, any levy lift requires voter approval. Beyond your councilmatic 1%.
It says any county may impose a road levy up to $225 of the $1,000 assessed value for a county road district. The levy is imposed by a legislative body and does not require voter approval.
A lift.
A lift does.
requires voter approval, and that's what
And this is
you're
just,
talking about here is the capacity for a lift.
and so what is this one, maximum levy rate at 225?
Well, you can't go above a 1%.
You're talking about the 1%. That is
That's-
correct.
That does not require a vote, but anything beyond that to do a lift to bring us up to 225 now requires voter approval.
Yes, thank you.
So if you wanted to go for that extra capacity, that is a levy lift and would have to go to the voters.
That's what I thought, that's why I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure we got that, because you can't just,
Yeah, this is just a little.
No, we can't just raise it.
just raise it up to 225, that's not, I knew that wasn't right.
Thank you. I'll make that correction there for the lift that it's.
So it should be does need voter approval to lift, regular
Yeah.
levy maximum.
That is correct. So then the next one on the list is the road levy shift. And this is just, this is shifting taxes from the roads fund to the general fund. And so, we cannot exceed $2.04, almost 2.5, $2.2475 per $1,000. And that's the total combined levy rate for the expense fund cannot be more than $4.05.
We've already done some of this.
We
We've
have,
done
Quite a bit.
a little bit. So the question has come up, especially in this last year, of what is our capacity for the levy shift? And, we're nowhere close to capacity, but the real question is how much do you wanna take out of the road fund? Did you happen to look up what the rate is of the levy shift this year? It's bizarre because you back into it based on the dollar amount you wanna shift, and we're shifting out between the road diversion and the levy shift about
it's
7,
4.7.
yeah.
Yeah, I have to look up the actual rate.
Yeah, we're already shifting out, but there's massive capacity.
Until you ask Public Works.
Well, that's,
They've got their,
Public Works will tell you, yes, there's massive capacity in the lift rate or the shift rate, but again, how much do you wanna really take out of the road fund?
Massive need to maintain
There's
roads.
massive need, that's exactly right. They will talk to you about the need. And rightfully so. It's like anything else in the budget, it's a balancing act. How much do you leave for these purposes? How much do you take to cover the need
over
for
time.
other things?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a balancing act.
So also out of the county, road fund would be diverted county road funds. And so this does not increase the levy amount or levy rate. It just takes a portion that you decide into the general fund. Those purposes have to be for law enforcement. And so right now we do $1.5 million. If you wanted to increase that, we do that during the normal budget cycle, and you can make that decision at any time. There's not voter approval. The conservation futures levy, the max capacity is 0.06.
On road diversion?
Yep.
We currently divert 1.5. It supports the sheriff's needs. We didn't increase the
No, we did
diversion,
not.
did we? We increased the shift.
That's right.
Because we were told
So-
that we pretty much have, you have to have a nexus to roads and traffic enforcement, and we were told that that was basically, we've already used the maximum we could next.
There's capacity of about another
Nexus.
500,000.
Articulate a nexus.
You could do another 500,000 there, but it's, it's better to do the shift, because it's flexible.
And the
The
sheriff's
shift is
department's
flexible.
flush now, right? For the most part?
Yeah, with public safety sales tax,
Yeah.
sort of.
Will be. We haven't started collecting it yet, so.
Respectively flush.
Yeah. All right, go ahead.
So the next is the Conservation Futures Levy. The total levy capacity is 0.0625 per thousand of assessed value. We have availability there. It would be restricted for acquiring rights and interest in real property, so for purchasing open space and future development rights. And that goes into the Conservation Futures Fund. It needs voter approval,
For a lift.
yep, for a lift.
Can I ask a I guess I'll be kind of skipping ahead, right? And I'll be looking to commissioners as well. For the Conservation Futures Levy and the conservation areas for REIT, I'm wondering, as we're having the discussion of the long-term ag, and one of the things that we as commissioners have heard has been the purchase of development rights. And which tool would be better to even start having that discussion if the board decides to go that route?
We had a discussion, and I'm just gonna jump to it since you brought it up. We had a discussion at this is my third time through this exercise, and last year, as I pulled up my notes, we talked about conservation REIT to try to solve 3 problems. Cause you can take, it's, according to my notes, it would raise up to $18 million a year, requires a simple majority vote, and we discussed using it to do parks M&O, which we have no other source for, ag easements to deal with what you're talking about, and for a safety valve for the HCP program, just so we don't, if they run short, we don't have to increase fees, or like it would be a safety valve for mitigation lands.
And you can do parks M&O?
Absolutely, is what we were told.
Out of
Preservation
the
and-
Conservation REIT,
Conservation REIT, the use is for acquisition and maintenance of conservation areas.
that
Parks
is
are considered, all parks are considered conservation areas.
open, as far as we
That's what we
can tell
discussed
right
last
now.
year.
If you wanna get deeper in it, we do better review, but, for what we know right now, we could use it for, parks M&O.
And the source
parks are
is,
considered open spaces.
and the source is a real estate sale.
1% tax on a real estate sale.
Wow.
Yeah,
And, yeah, out of last year's exercise, that was the only one that lingered with me as something I was interested in. The other ones didn't seem to be something I was kind of,
right.
but that one, because it could check 3 boxes with one swoop that we haven't, we really need and we have no other way to do. I was like, oh, that's something for the board to consider.
And I would say, to Commissioner Mejia's question of which would be better, it depends. It depends on how you want to use the new revenue, because if you do the levy lift for conservation futures, it can only be used as conservation futures could be used, which is restricted. You could still use it to purchase, the properties, but any M&O would have to be directly linked
Connected to what you
to
purchase
what
with those
you- yep,
funds. I
to
think
the
it's more, I
properties
think
that
we
are
were thinking the
purchased
REIT is
and-
more
yep.
flexible.
way
And it
more
requires voter
flexible than we
approval.
can see right now with the REIT.
They both require a voter approval.
They
I
do.
thought it was, oh, okay.
No difference there.
Okay.
We've already gotten voter approval for conservation futures, but to increase it, we'd have to get another approval.
1%, yep, yep, anything above the 1%.
But it was short of a parks district, like it was a solution
Yeah.
that could deal with our parks.
Because our parks.
And the ag easements,
Yeah.
because the whole ag zoning issue, we're hearing like, okay, well, you should make farmers whole, and we don't have any way to do that,
Right.
to preserve ag land.
Well, you said three things,
Yeah, and then the HCP was the third. So we've got,
which is already taken care of, right?
it's taken care of right now, but, you know, property prices can increase. I mean, there's different factors. It's a 30-year plan.
Yeah.
And, you know, land may increase in price or we would like to not have to ever increase fees on people beyond what we set at the beginning. So it would be sort of a safe, our idea was it would be sort of the safety valve for additional expenses connected to the mitigation land that we need. So as kind of a third priority, but ag easements and, park meet.
First two are
mineral,
huge, yeah.
Yeah, are huge.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that.
Next is the emergency medical service levy. The total capacity is 0.5. We currently have a lid on the medic one, and so if we wanted to, we have more capacity to do that, but we're currently in a levy lift right now.
This is what we did just a couple years ago.
Is what we did a few years ago, and we structured it on a 6-year lid lift with the first year, the way a multi-year lift works is the first year you set the rate, and then every future year is the increase on the highest lawful levy. So we are currently in the third, I think we're in the third year where the levy is increased instead of a 1% increase, it's a 7% increase on the levy each year. And then in the 6th year, the way the resolution was written, that is a permanent lift. And then we go back to just the 1% per year.
So the next levy here is the Cultural Access Program levy. There is also a sales tax. So you could either do the levy lift, a levy here, or you could also do a sales tax. And so the cultural program, it would be restricted to advancements in preservation of science and technology, natural history, and zoology and performing arts. It would be an additional property tax. You can have it for up to 7 years in consecutive years. It is to benefit and to access nonprofit and cultural organizations. If you do the levy lift, it would be up to 0.1% of the retail sales. And if you turn to the back page here where it talks about retail sales tax, you could also see 0.1% or 1/10 sales tax. So you can either do a levy or a sales tax.
So,
The levy requires voter approval and the sales tax does not.
The allowable amount confuses.
So there is, on the levy amount, if you were to do the levy,
Levy has nothing to do with sales tax.
yeah, there's two of them. So there's one that's a levy and one there's a sales
Right.
tax.
So this says that the capacity is 0.1% of retail sales tax.
I'll bring it up so that we can see it out of the MRSC. And we're looking at this here.
I think that that's the sales tax limit. What's the levy restriction?
See, it says here the property tax, the additional levy with the maximum rate based on the retail sales. And this is the levy.
So if you were at all interested in doing this, we'd need to figure out how it actually works.
Yeah.
Because sales tax and levies.
Unless it's retail sales like
completely
retail sales. Based on that.
different. No. Levies and sales tax are
So
completely
it says the
different.
levy amount for the first year may not exceed any amount equal to the total taxable retail sales and taxable uses in the county.
So it would be extremely complicated.
So that's why it's written that way.
so what is it?
A mess.
Apparently, however much you set the levy, if it's property tax levy, the amount that you collect can't exceed what you would have collected
Under the
under
sales
a
tax.
0.1% sales tax, which, makes my head spin on how we'd even begin to set the levy.
So the levy requires a voter approval, but if you were to do the sales tax option, it does not, and it would be the 0.1%, 1 and 1/10%. So there is a levy option and also a sales tax option.
The sales tax option is Council Manic.
Right.
So there is a sales tax, councilmatic sales tax option for that cultural access levy.
Right.
Yep.
So, and when we're talking about the brewery district as a historic district, and what is the funding that might be available, this would be something that could be used to fund that district. The,
For 7 years, it says?
it's a limited amount of time, but it could get you, the money in the short term that you need to be able to leverage other funds.
And this also sounds like it might be something that the park, our friends at the Park Foundation, instead of the general fund.
When you talk about recreation programs or art programs, or this could absolutely be used for that. And I believe the city of Olympia, is doing this tax, is collecting this tax, so it might be very interesting to see what they're doing with the money.
Aren't they doing their whole armory building and programs there, I think is what
I've not paid attention to what they're doing with this particular fund.
they acquired the armory, they're gonna
Right,
turn it
and
into an art
when-
center.
We were at the EDC in December, you and I were at the panel that talked about the arts. And they talked about Olympia being one of the arts districts, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? Yeah.
Yep.
Something like, there was this article that came out in NACO where there was a partnership between a county and their tribes, and they set up a tribal museum, which I thought would be just amazing if Thurston County could do that, and I'm wondering, would something like that fit under this?
We can look into it. The Tribal Museum. It does say nonprofit organizations, and it does define what a cultural organization is, so we could look into that.
We can
And I
keep
can
this
send you
on
the
list
article.
and look a
That's,
little-
that's a natural history museum, and it says natural, I mean, essentially
Yeah.
what you're saying.
It should,
Right, so just to finish up the levies, the affordable housing levy, it would be restricted to finance affordable housing for low income and very low income. The levy could be up to 50 cents for assessed value, and it would need simple, majority vote. Okay, so now we're into retail sales. We talked about the cultural access program being a sales tax, so this is where it's also listed as a sales tax, and this would mean that it does not need voter approval if it was approved through sales tax. The next option here is the public safety sales tax, Proposition 1, which we just did, but it is listed here because we did not go out for the total availability, but we have just put that into effect, and it states that it there in the notes that just in the November 2023 election, this was approved. And what the additional 0.1% would be. And then the next item here is the retail car sales tax. You can have 1% on rental cars, and it would be for funding public sports facilities and activities. It does not require a voter approval. To figure out how much that would generate, we do further analysis if you guys were interested
And activities.
in activities.
What does that mean?
Let's see.
Sorry, did I?
Sports activities and facilities, amateur sports activities and stadium facilities. So things that have to do with recreational activities for youth and
Do we
stuff.
have any idea how much this would, like, any kind of
I don't
concept?
have a clue.
Would this be included with the cities, or is it just like county rental?
Good question.
We've not spent any time looking into the possibilities of this tax because I never had interest from the board before, so we could certainly look deeper.
The Olympia Mariners.
It can't be used for.
Well, I mean, talking to Chairman Frank about their ideas at Quemu Village, I mean, he's talking about having the Sonics there. Like, he has big aspirations for professional sports facilities and drawing, I mean, so
Don't be spilling out their plan.
there are ideas out there that are floating around.
May not be used to subsidize any professional
Not for,
sports,
yeah.
so.
Acquiring, constructing, maintaining, or operating public sports and stadium facilities, engineering, planning, and financial legal advice for, public sports and stadium facilities, youth and
People
amateur
have talked
sports.
about pickleball and, you know, all
Amateur
kinds of
baseball's
other.
big for some
Amateur
communities.
If
baseball.
we did a rack
we
two in
could-
South
yeah,
County or something like that.
Now
Yep,
you're talking. Sold.
yep.
I mean, that's amateur and the rack gets used a lot.
Yeah.
It's always busy.
But who knows how much money it is.
Right. And we could attempt to figure out a way to see how much it generates, but we might be able to look that up in DOR.
Yeah, we might be able to figure out if we can find rental information, and it's in the incorporated and unincorporated areas, and we'll figure out how that revenue. Okay, so then the next one is Transportation Benefits District. There are 4 lines here on the TBD. And the reason for that is that there are 2 available fund sources for the TBD. And then those are split within 2 different options. So the first one is a vehicle licensing fee. The vehicle licensing fee, there's a non-voted licensing fee up to $50. In the first year, you would be able to do a fee for $20 on vehicles, and then hold that for 2 years, and then add another $20 to it. Hold that for 2 years, and then you would be at $40, and then you could get to 50, and that would need no voter approval. And so that would be vehicle licensing fees would be paid by those within the district on their vehicles that they own. It would be assessed at the time that the vehicle registration is renewed. Currently, the city of Olympia imposes a $40 vehicle licensing fee. So,
So would this go on top of that, or
no, so this would only be,
they're only,
So
Be
our
our
TBD
it's in the
is
unincorporated
the
areas.
unincorporated county. This would not apply within any city.
and you get that assessed based on where you live, not where you purchase your tabs?
Right, where you renew your,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's where you live.
I will say I'm interested in one of these options.
People are
I-
really sensitive about their
I-
tabs not being $30.
I understand that, but, you know, there's also the sales tax. I just want the board to have further discussion on one of these options. With the shift we did this year, I mean, that to me was just, it hurt a lot. And I know it hurt the rest of the board to really pass that. And I want to be able to, I know that it's on a limited time basis, from what I learned. And so just even doing this for a couple of years to kind of help our roads, I think would be worthwhile to have more conversation on.
The county, just for background, did a study, and it was like released the year that I joined the board, so it was probably like 2018 study, 2019-ish. And it found majority support, fairly, like 55% or something like that, support for this. And they asked, do you prefer the tab versus the sales tax, which I thought there'd be a big difference in that, because people always talk about the car tabs, Tim Iman and stuff, and there was public was basically indifferent between the two.
Really?
The 2 mechanisms in the survey, which I was really surprised. I thought the tab would come out way lower, but they were basically, it was like 53% support for one and 56% support for the other, or something like that. I mean, it was like most stuff here, close on the, but, you know,
Yeah.
that's what we had, but we didn't do anything
Nope,
with it.
did not move it forward.
Yeah, I would be more, like, I would push more towards the sales tax, and because I feel like you're sharing it with people that aren't necessarily, you know, people that are using the roads that aren't necessarily living here as well.
So the sales tax option up to 1 1/10% does not need voter approval, so you could go up to that. The total capacity is 3/10. The city of Lacey and the city of Tumwater impose a 2/10 sales tax.
We heard that from the mayor at the State of Communities, how he said, if you're on a good
Roads are better.
road,
Yeah,
you're in Lacey, and that's because they went ahead and funded their TBD.
So we,
I like had to give him a shove on
So
that
we will
one.
keep this
Several
on the
times.
list for more conversation.
so we've done some preliminary analysis on the numbers with Public Works, and so we can share that when we're ready to.
The next TBD meeting.
Yes,
And that
yes,
is-
that's, which will be in
March.
March.
So
I will say though, if you're going to move forward on a piece of this that would require voter approval, we need to know sooner rather than later. So if you're considering the councilmanic options, you can do those at any time. But if you're gonna get it on a ballot, there's restrictions, I think there's restrictions on which ballot it can go on, we'd have to check that. And then we'd need, advance time to do all of the work that needs to be done on a ballot measure. So think about that, as we, again, we'll leave this on the list.
So then the next is the lodging tax. So this is tax on hotel and motels. We currently already receive the basic, which is the state share, up to 2%, but there's an additional or special lodging tax where you can add additional 2% on the top of the already credit from the state sales tax. There is a one-pager, basically a two-pager because of the front and back inside your packet. Lodging tax here. Currently in 2022, we received $105,000, so we're just anticipating that that would double to about $200,000 if you were to do the 2%.
I'm interested in this one. I think that, you know, I think tourism is an important aspect of bringing in new revenue, and we need to be able to invest in marketing to make that happen.
This is the item that was brought to you by Annette at the VCB.
She also provided some more additional information on short-term rentals, and so that's also in your packet as far as what's going on in the unincorporated areas with short-term rentals.
So we can take 2% and make it 4%, is that what I'm reading?
Yes.
Can I ask a question related to this? I know that we're in the process of trying to fix our VCB just because of the remarks we've received from Department of Revenue. I'm just wondering, can we add this, or can we add this on while that conversation is still ongoing? And
You certainly can. Because this is not the TPA, this is the LTAC.
okay,
And the thing we have to fix is the TPA, Tourism Promotion Area.
okay,
And the reason, again, that we have to fix that is the county, and not just Thurston County, a lot of counties set it up this way. We excluded specific types of overnight,
Camping.
stays, like camping being the best example.
Does that include like Airbnbs, or are those?
No, it's, the way we have set up our TPA is, any, I'm gonna just say hotel, any hotel with more than 50 beds. So Airbnbs don't count. Airbnbs are collected under the 2% for the LTAC, and this would apply to Airbnbs.
I see.
This 2% you're considering. So again, two completely different things. We funnel the TPA money straight through to the VCB, and it's basically governed by the hoteliers. The LTAC goes to the LTAC committee. There's a grant process, an application process, and with recommended awards by the LTAC committee that the board has final approval on.
You're saying this would increase it
This
by
would double the
$100,000?
LTAC.
From 100 to 200, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I guess the good thing is it's paid almost entirely by people outside of our county.
by people that essentially the marketing would bring them into, and so it increases it. And I just want to point out, I think there's, what, was it 320,000 in asks right now for LTAC funds? And we're dispersing only 150, so there's
Need, is there?
need and requests. I'd also mentioned last night that we have an MOU with the VCB to provide marketing for our kind of rural community economic interests, so agritourism and things like that, and we provide them no specific money to provide, to do that either. So there's an, you know, like if we want to bring in more tourists to county areas, we need more money to invest in the marketing and the promotion of those county economic
Yep.
milieu.
Time check, guys, we're at 11. We have 2 more sessions before noon. Commissioner Edwards, did you have something? You're off mute.
I was just gonna mention, Wayne actually did bring that up, but Annette is the expert on how much money that'll raise and what's the potential and stuff. So, and I guess he's on that committee now, so I just think it's worth looking at.
Nicole, can we?
Just got a few
finish
more
this?
lines
Okay.
to speed through, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was the last line, the last thing on there was the REIT, and we
talked
discussed
about
that. Oh, sorry, and then the next page,
A few more that are just,
I'm-
they're kind of fun facts.
yeah.
So very quickly.
Yeah, so, the emissions tax, this would be a 5% on any emissions charged for any of our entertainment venues that we have.
You like the fair. We
Fair,
do
yeah.
a sales admissions on the fair, why do it?
The next,
Commercial parking,
yep, commercial parking, I'm not sure how much commercial parking we have, in the unincorporated area, if any, but if we did, we would be able to impose a tax on that as well, and it would restrict it for transportation improvement purposes. There could also be a local option gas tax, which is the next item there.
nobody does.
Yeah,
It would be, it requires voter approval,
get the
so,
torches and pitchforks.
yeah.
And then the last is our gambling tax, which is our punch cards and pull tabs. We are currently receiving receipts in there, but you have the opportunity to increase if you'd like to.
It's not very much money, a few $1,000s.
Yeah, we
So-
went through that one time.
Not worth it. So those are your options, and the ones that I caught that you'd like to have further conversation on is around the road levy. I'm sure you're gonna wanna talk more about the shift. So we'll keep that on. The conservation futures levy, the cultural access,
It was conservation's REIT, not
The REIT,
conservation,
right?
yeah.
you don't wanna look at the levy? Okay, cool, well, we'll take that off. The cultural access program might, you might wanna have a little more conversation about that. We'll look and try to see how much the rental car sales tax could generate. The TBD, options will all stay on for further consideration. The hotel motel additional lodging tax and conservation REIT.
I got the sense from you that you would like to talk about, the first one, current expense fund. I mean, you,
If I were in your seat, I would not, put that forward this year. I would keep that in your pocket
Okay.
for when you do courthouse.
Okay, then let's adjourn this meeting. We'll move right to our next section.
thank you, Nicole, thank you. Thank you, Jen.
Nice work, Nicole.
We need to stop a Zoom and start a Zoom.
We are gonna change Zoom, so I don't know. We'll all open it up. You've got different Zoom.
All right, good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners Work Session. It's Wednesday, January 24th, 2024. It's 11:06 a.m. My name is Ty Mentor, Chair of the Board. We have Vice Chair Commissioner Wayne Fournier and Commissioner Carolina Mejia in the boardroom, Commissioner Edwards by Zoom, and Commissioner Klaus is excused for this session. For virtual public attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. Our topic until 11:30 is Incident Command Structure Training for Elected Officials. We also have Interim County Manager Robin Campbell, Ben Miller-Todd, who's our Emergency Management and EMS Director, and Kyle Bustad, and I don't want to mangle your job title, so tell us what your title is.
Emergency Management Manager.
Okay, very good. And so I'm just going to kick it maybe to Ben to set us up with this item.
Absolutely. Good morning, Commissioners. We have a couple back-to-back agenda items this morning. Kyle is ready with he and his team to discuss the incident management structure and system. This is specifically tailored to elected officials. It's also a requirement of many of our federal grants that are coming in that everybody has this training involved with their elected timeline, as well as going right into the hazard mitigation plan. I know we have a jam-packed about an hour this morning with you, and so I want to immediately turn it back over to Kyle.
Thanks, Ben Miller-Todd. Can I share share the screen now? Look at me. Okay, I passed the first test. Good morning. I'm Kyle Bustad, the Emergency Management Manager, and this morning, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. As you know, that we receive federal funding from Department of Homeland Security and FEMA, and part of that funding is there's always a catch, right? But it's a good catch in that we have to adopt NIMS, ICS, which we'll talk about shortly. And then part of that requirement is a training requirement. So what does that look like for first level responders and then all the way up to elected officials, which is you. So this will satisfy that requirement today. And then also a little bit about emergency management because I guess in our world, we know that disasters are inevitable and part of our job is to mitigate those, how to effectively and efficiently respond to them, and then recover the best we can. And so I'm hoping to educate a little bit about emergency management. So what is emergency management? Oh, and also I realize this is typically a 4-hour presentation that I have, I'm cram packing into half an hour. So we're gonna try to work some magic and get it done. I have 82 slides to get through. And I'm kidding. We don't have 82 slides to get through. We have enough slides to get through within half an hour, and we're going to do it. We're going to make it happen. So there's information on the slides and in the presentation, although I may not read off everything. So part of emergency management is we are behind the scenes, kind of hopefully behind the scenes making the magic happen. And our job is to make sure that our community is safe, that our government functions well during a disaster. And that involves a lot of planning, training, and exercise, and resource allocations, and resource assessment. So it means that we need to constantly be in a planning cycle. We need to train and exercise against those plans. We have to understand the resources that are available and any gaps of those resources. And then a big part is community preparedness. So we love teaching and educating about personal preparedness to the community, all aspects of the community, from elementary schools all the way to retirement villages and communities. Those seems to be our specialty. They're the most proactive, I will say, in our biggest community. And we know that all of these communities in the county are complex. So what Olympia looks like is different than what Bucota looks like, right? And so we have to think about how we will plan and respond and recover from any disaster or emergency as we go through. So that is a little bit about emergency management. And we try to make sure that we're proactive and continuous. It's a continuous cycle. It's a lot of doom and gloom, but we try to do that with a smile. So, what do we feel is important and why is emergency management important? I guess we feel like the biggest thing is that it protects communities. We know that our populations are different and their needs are different. And so these are complex issues that are stressful and yet exciting to embrace and figure out how we address them. It's important because economic stability is crucial to the success of any jurisdiction, right? And so we know that we need to plan for disaster, and then how do we get those communities back on track, right? Because that economic stability is important to the success of people, and that keeps people in the community. So it is important, and part of it is public trust and confidence. So we know that we want to be a voice of confidence. We need to make sure that if we ever have to put an alert and warning message of evacuation, that the community trusts and knows that we have their best interest and that we are a good person. We are a good person. And we have a legal and ethical responsibility. There's RCW, WAC, there's federal regulations, and then there's also just a moral obligation that, well, as you know, I mean, you're in public service, that we want to take care of our community. We want to do what's right, and so we feel a responsibility for doing that. And then part of why we do what we do is that if we do it effectively, it helps create some resilience in our community. So when those disasters happen, because they will happen, we will be able to respond and recover from a little more efficiently and effectively. So there's 4 areas of emergency management: mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. You're lucky enough that you're gonna get to hear about mitigation after I get through rambling on, but these are the 4 areas of preparedness or emergency management as we go through. I'm going to go through each of these, but quickly. Mitigation, I won't spend too much time on there because you're going to hear about the mitigation plan and what it's about right after this. But obviously, it is what it sounds like. These are the things that we try to do to mitigate a disaster. All of the things that we try to assess and figure out, are there ways and implementation aspects that we can do to lessen the impact of the disaster, which includes public education and our hazard mitigation plan, which we'll talk about soon. Preparedness. This is exciting. It's fun. I like preparedness because we get to talk to everyone, and I'm a talker, and I enjoy having conversations with people. So these are when we talk about public education, personal preparedness, but also it includes our plans. This is the pre-disaster, right? How do we think of all the bad things that could happen, and then how do we set policies and procedures into place for the ECC, or how do we coordinate with fire and law, health and medical? Like, all of these aspects are part of preparedness. And then we train and exercise and ensure that our community trains and exercises in preparation for a disaster or emergency. And then also, what equipment needs do we foresee or potentially could impact us, and then try to mitigate that before a disaster happens. And then the response, which is always the fun part, because that's exciting. Typically, that's our first responders that are going through law and fire. So they're doing immediate response, search and rescue, but this could include evacuation, and also it includes activation of the Emergency Coordination Center. So you'll hear EOC and ECC, Emergency Operations Center, Emergency Coordination Center. They're interchangeable. just one calls one or another. It depends on kind of the activities, but you'll hear both of them. So activation of the ECC or EOC would be a response activity, and that will help us gain situational awareness and help coordinate any of the activities and support for the field. As in response, we always think of the LIP principle. These are the priorities that we always think of and act on when we're doing resource allocation or we're doing any kind of activity or incident management, and that is life safety, incident stabilization, and property preservation. So life safety is always going to be the first priority, and then try to stabilize the incident, and then property preservation is going to be last. And then recovery. Recovery is huge. It is vital and important that we get it right. It involves more, and it could be long-term, it could be short-term. There's just so nuanced. And super excited that we'll be jumping into this again this year for 2024. But what does that look like for us? And we know that after a storm, after a disaster, there's debris, right? Like a windstorm, there's trees, but what happens to all of that debris? Part of recovery is figuring that out. And if there's a massive disaster, that debris is an impact, and it impedes progress to a normal. Rebuilding infrastructure, healthcare, rehabilitation. Mental health is important after disaster. People are traumatized for years after disaster because of their livelihood being impacted. And so it's important that we think of healthcare and those long-term needs. And then economic and social recovery. So it's important we get schools back as soon as possible. How do we get people back to their normal or a new normal after a disaster? So emergency management is so important that we try to figure out, I didn't mean to say emergency management is so important. Emergency management is important because part of us is trying to figure out how we get back to that new normal. And then also the economic recovery is vital in that aspects. If you think of us trying to get people back to just everyday life. So it's important for us to get the mall together. It's important for us to get the movie theaters back up. It's important for us to get restaurants, fast food. How do we coordinate and get those up and running as quickly as possible? All right, key roles of emergency management. These are, these kind of aspects are vital and critical for us and our strategy as a department. And if we're going to be successful in having an effective and comprehensive emergency management program. So the risk assessment, these are our analyzing and doing assessments of the types of disasters and emergencies that could impact Thurston County, such as floods, earthquakes, but also can include industrial incidents and pandemics. So what do those look like? And then planning around those hazards. So once we identify those hazards, developing and updating, which is important, updating those comprehensive plans that outline specific procedures and activities that would help us through a disaster. And then training and exercise. It's important that we do training and exercise along those planning efforts. So it's great to have a plan, but if you don't practice it, if you don't walk through it, if you can't poke holes in it or proof it, then it's not going to be effective. So it's important that we have a robust training and exercise program. Resource management, this is difficult because it also takes funding. But what we try to do is our best to keep an inventory of potential items and resources that are in the county and jurisdiction, and then how that would help us during resource allocation discussions during a disaster or post-recovery. And then that includes mutual aid agreements, making sure that we have those mutual aid agreements and MOUs with other organizations or private organizations. Community engagement, talked about personal preparedness. This is important. that we get the community energized and prepared for any potential impacts that happen. And then crisis communication, so we know our alert and warning, so we know mass notification system. If we have to provide information to residents to shelter in place or evacuate, and then that just engagement piece of these are the types of activities you should do pre-disaster. This is what you should do during a disaster, and this is what you should do after disaster. And then the recovery obviously is long-term or short-term. Could be quick, or it could be a year or two, or even longer than that. So if we think of the floods that occurred in January of 2022, we just paid out some reimbursement to residents that were impacted by that flood. We just paid them out, paid some reimbursement costs this summer that were supported by a grant from the state. So it was a year after the state said, hey, we have some additional individual assistance funding that would support flooding and storm impacts from early 2022. And so we went through the process. But if residents didn't have documentation, if they didn't have pictures, if they didn't have receipts, then we couldn't verify that they spent that money to repair, or they had the damage. So there was no verification. So if they didn't have that, they couldn't get reimbursed. And so that's why we try to educate people during a disaster to make sure they document with pictures and to make sure they document with all receipts. So this is where we move into the federal requirement of ICS, the Incident Command System. Now the ICS is ideally it is supposed to be, and it is it's a collective resolve to kind of a comprehensive approach to incident response. What it is a uniformed kind of policy and procedure that allows any responder, any emergency manager, any jurisdiction, any person that is responding to a disaster, regardless of jurisdiction, or state, doesn't matter, that we're all speaking the same language. So we could go into an EOC in the state of Florida and would be able to talk the same. We would have the same information and same understanding because of the incident command system. And there's big component. There's 5 major components: command, operations, planning, logistics, and finance and administration. Now this is similar. This will be what it's out in field incident response, but also what is in the EOC or Emergency Operations Center. So the reason we have ICS was in 2003, President Bush signed Homeland Security Presidential Directive 5, and then also Presidential Policy Directive 8, which developed management of domestic incidents and what those the national preparedness guidelines. So what came out of that is the National Response Framework and the National Incident Management System, commonly known as NIMS. That's what we'll hear. We'll hear NIMS and ICS. So the difference really is the presidential directive is the policy, the NRF is the policy, and NIMS is kind of the procedures as we go through. So a disaster. The NRF, the National Response Framework, is that overarching document that says it's a requirement and of how we are going to respond to all hazards across the nation. So these are what all states, all jurisdictions should do to provide efficient and effective response. It provides a structure to how we respond. And the core out of this is you'll commonly heard in our field, our disasters are local. And that's because it starts with our cities and towns. And we know that our individuals' households are impacted by disasters. So if we can get them as prepared as possible, we know that's less of an impact on them, which makes it less of an impact on first responders. But it interacts with private sector and NGOs. So we know that private sector has a lot of flexibility in how they help and respond to the communities after disasters. Local government is our first response, so cities and towns. And then if we run out of resources, if we're not able to find it, for example, if we needed a bulldozer, we couldn't find a bulldozer anywhere, we would ask the state. And the state would look for in their resources, all in their state agencies or around the state, and to see if they had a bulldozer. And if they couldn't find a bulldozer, then they would ask FEMA or the federal government. So it's a cascading effect that the National Response Framework says that local governments should respond first. And it's true, because who knows the incident better, who knows resources better than local government. So that led to the National Incident Management System, NIMS. So if we think of NRF as the policy, NIMS is more of the procedure. So NRF is real broad. NIMS really provides that kind of systematic approach to, it provides a systematic approach to how we respond. So what it is a flexible document. It's the ideas and procedures that are in there are meant to expand or shrink, no matter the complexity of the size. So we know that sometimes emergencies or disasters could be small or centrally located into one area, or they could be big and complex, and it's going to require more agencies, more organizations. What NIMS allows is that flexibility to shrink or expand depending on the complexity without compromising the understanding of it. What it is not is a tactical plan. What it doesn't is provide exactly how a fire or law person is going to operate in a disaster. It's not going to provide incident objectives. It's not going to say where resources should be allocated. And it is a local all hazards, but it's not a terrorism specific plan, which has been, because this is an effect after 9/11, there was a lot of mistaken that it was a terrorist or terrorism related only plan. Okay, and then I'm coming in the home stretch. So incident timeframes. This is important in there because what is the time frame of a disaster or an incident? We think of flooding, right? So I talked about flooding. That impact of when it started raining got to flood stage, to past flood stage, and flooded, impacted people's houses, and then the waters receded. At what point would you consider that incident over? But we're still in the process of homeowners of trying to recover, of trying to then having to pull out all their carpet or rebuild their cabinets. So their time frame is not over. So I guess it's important that we know that it's nuanced, in that the time frame is going to be different for every scenario. All right, unified command. When a disaster happens, and it's a big disaster, it's going to be a complex disaster that's going to involve other counties, Lewis County, or other counties in our region, Region 3 Homeland Security, Mason County, Lewis, Pacific, and Grays Harbor, that we will have times where we are working towards the same goal. We're going to have similar resources, and we could have a unified command where you would be talking to their elected officials. You'd be in the same room with their elected officials, but and trying to help allocate and decide where we're going to spend time, energy, and resources. But it doesn't mean that you're speaking on behalf of their jurisdiction. You're speaking on behalf of us, and wait, did I do it? No, I don't think so. Sorry.
Keep going.
So in Unified Command, there is no one person, sorry for whatever I did. There's no one person in charge. You're speaking for your own jurisdiction. Thank you. And the next part is our, oh shoot, what did I do?
Just click it.
Oh, okay, there we go, thank you. All right, ECC, the Emergency Coordination Center, what is it? This is where the magic happens. I don't know, have you been to the ECC? Oh, I love that building. If not, you should come out there because it is a glorious building. And not just because we're in it, but because it really is an exciting building and it's beautiful. But there's a lot of stuff that happens in there. So we collect and analyze and synthesize information, or at least that's what we're trying to do. We help support resources out of the ECC. We coordinating plans and determining future needs. So we have a lot of smart people that when a disaster happens, when an emergency happens, are looking at what is happening now and then what's going to happen in the future and trying to forecast so that leaders, so that those in charge and those speaking to the general public will have some guidance to what decisions to make. Alert and warning, so this is important for our mass notification system, TC Alert. And then we have our Joint Information Center with our Joint Information System where our PIOs talk to other PIOs and communicate and talk about how they're going to coordinate information and tell our story. We develop situational awareness. We are coordinating with other EOCs. And then also if there's mass care needs, if there's a need for a shelter or points of distribution, the EUCC will help coordinate that. All right, and this is a command structure. This is all across the nation. This is part of NIMS, ICS. This is the org chart that will be similar to in the field response and in the ECC. So you all have an incident commander who's in charge and is setting the overall objectives. You have your PIO, the Public Information Officer, very similar, right? They're telling our story. They're the liaison to media and to the community. Ops section is developing those tactical objectives. The planning section, these are the ones that are gaining situational awareness. These are ones developing sit reps, the situation reports, trying to get that information that will help leaders make better and informed decisions. Logistics section, we love these people because they get us food and toilet paper. And then the finance and admin section, super important because we need to make sure we document all of our costs and that we are providing good fiscal guidance to our people out in the field because this helps us years later when we're trying to seek reimbursement from FEMA or the federal government. And then it also just makes sure that we are being fiscally responsible. Okay, I promise you, 6 more slides. No, senior officials role.
I'm not stopping you because you're just impinging on your own time in the next section, so.
We'll get through it. Sorry, Emily. All right, so your job is to ensure continuity of government. This is why our continuity of operations and our continuity of government is so important, and we're going to brace that this year. We're going to make sure that all of our county departments have reviewed. Our auditor's office and elections have a great COOP, and they are constantly exercising training, so we're going to mimic them on the rest of the departments. So making sure that you are proclaiming emergency. You have the ability and you are the ones that proclaim an emergency or state of emergency. And this helps us suspend some contracting rules or regulations during a disaster, which we will still be ethically and physically responsible, but it helps the process a little bit to move stuff a little faster. Allocate or resolve any potential resource allocation conflicts. If we run into an issue with multiple jurisdictions, we may need your guidance on what that looks like. And then coordinating with our PIO to make sure that we keep the media and the public informed, and then also coordination with other senior officials. So other commissioners, other mayors, all of the people, other elected officials that, would require that same level of conversation. So, on-scene role, I've had many, instances where the senior elected official has come on scene, it's been successful. I have seen where it's been unsuccessful as well. So, make sure that if a disaster happens, you're a draw, you know, people wanna see you, people wanna talk to you. So, make sure you talk to the PIO or the incident commander about your visit out there, because it can be a morale booster. It can be, it's nice to have, you know, someone in authority come and say like, nice job, thank you for supporting. But also it can create a little chaos when you are on the scene and it takes, responders away because they want to, help and assist and escort the, senior official. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or can move into hazard mitigation.
Questions? Commissioner Edwards?
No, I really don't have any questions. Good job.
Commissioner Claus said that she's sick and has a fever.
Let's just roll right
Can we roll in the
into
same Zoom
yep,
to the next
let's
piece?
just go.
I'm gonna sneak out in like 5 minutes to go to the EDC board meeting, so I don't wanna.
Okay. The next up is the All Hazards Mitigation Plan briefing, and this is with Kyle as well.
It is, so I will say that, I'm gonna bring Emily up. Emily is our hazard mitigation and recovery mitigation and recovery coordinator. I'm gonna get it right. And so she has been helping, facilitate this process. And so she's my expert, but also she's duty officer. She's current duty officer. So if her phone rings, I'm gonna pinch hit for her. So, Emily, take it away.
Thanks, Kyle. So the reason that we're here today for the hazard mitigation plan is because we have an updated plan currently being reviewed and in the approval process at the state and federal levels. And so the purpose is to inform you of the update and the contents so that when we, after it's approved and we present it to you for adoption in February, it's not the first time you're seeing it or hearing of it. And I do want to kind of make clear at the beginning, because it can get a little confusing, that the hazard mitigation plan that we will be presenting to you for adoption, it was attached for today's meeting, but there's two parts. There's the core plan, which is a multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan that includes Thurston County and cities within it, fire districts, special purpose districts, all encompassing of the Thurston region. And then there's the Thurston County Annex for unincorporated Thurston County. So those are the two documents that really we're asking you to look at and become familiar with for the hazard mitigation plan update. Okay, so just what we're gonna cover today, a brief overview of what hazard mitigation planning is, what requirements are, what Thurston County hazard mitigation plans have looked like, specifically what the new core plan and annex look like, and what's within them, and then next steps. And there will be time for questions if any come up during this. So Kyle talked a bit about hazard mitigation and hazard mitigation planning. So hazard mitigation planning reduces the loss of life and property by minimizing the impact of disasters. So benefits can include increased resilience to the community, that ability to withstand and bounce back from disasters, reduce cost for response and recovery, and protection of resources, cultural, historic, natural resources. It is a federal, you have to have a federally approved hazard mitigation plan updated every 5 years in order to apply for and receive hazard mitigation assistance grant funding. And so the reason why that's a requirement is because the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000 set forth a framework for state, tribal, local, territorial governments to engage in hazard mitigation planning. There's the CFR, Code of Federal Regulations section that kind of guides what you need to do to develop the plan and for the plan to get state and federal approval. So this current update updated plan that's being approved right now is our fourth edition. Our first edition of the plan was adopted by the board in 2003. So how does this affect Thurston County? Why is this important to Thurston County? Since 1956, we've been included in 25 federal disaster declarations. 4 of those have happened since the last version, the third edition, was adopted, including Thurston County's first fire management assistance emergency declaration. So that's just of note because of the increase in risk for wildfire in Western Washington. So far, flooding and severe storms have accounted for 84% of the county's disaster declarations. So a look at that core plan, again, this is the multi-jurisdictional plan. We contracted, Thurston County Emergency Management contracted with Thurston Regional Planning Council to draft this update. Other partners included the Thurston County Emergency Management Council and the Hazard Mitigation Planning Work Group, which consists of local government representatives and stakeholders. It included mayors, fire chiefs, planners, safety managers, agency representatives from all throughout the region. There's 6 main sections in the core plan. An introduction, which goes more in depth into, the background of hazard mitigation and requirements. The mitigation strategy, which lays out goals, policies, and initiatives. A community profile, a risk assessment that goes through 9 hazards that Thurston County communities are most likely to be impacted by. A plan maintenance section, that's how we're gonna measure success of the plan, monitoring, evaluation, updates. And finally, the plan process. How is the plan developed? Who is involved? This graphic is a very broad overview of the 9 hazards included in the plan. So the left side is the different kinds of hazards. The far right is the overall risk rating.
Sorry, can I interrupt just 1 second? We're not seeing any of that online, so you know. We just still have the Kyle's question page.
I see it says that you're
Okay, we're seeing the slides in the room, so we'll see if we can.
Thanks.
Yep. Can you see that now?
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks for letting us know. So this left side is the hazards that are profiled in depth in the plan, and then the far right is the risk rating from low to high. And that risk rating is informed by the probability of occurrence and then the impacts on people, property, and economy. So you can see that some of the lower rated risks are the tsunami and volcanic lahar hazards, and then it goes all the way up to the earthquake and wildfire receive the high risk rating. And the risk assessment section really goes in depth into each of these and modeling scenarios, and that helped inform all of this. So another big part of the plan is the mitigation initiatives. These are potential actions that could be implemented with funding from federal assistance, federal grant funds. So the initiative development was informed by a number of things, including those risk ratings that we just saw, mapping, capability assessment, so strengths and weaknesses of jurisdictions, all that are already in place, public engagement strategy. We did 2 surveys with TRPC, and then all initiatives underwent a benefit cost review process and were ranked. And just a note that the initiatives in the mitigation plan are potential projects that could be pursued with funding, leadership support, and collaboration. Just because we're adopting the plan does not mean that we're committing to implementing every single one of the initiatives. It means that we're eligible to apply for and receive funding, and we could use those initiatives that have already been kind of thought out and framed a little bit. Those could be projects that we are going to pursue. Adoption of the plan also doesn't mean that we're limited to only those initiatives. We could apply for a different initiative or a different project that isn't laid out in this plan. So that being said, the core plan, the multi-jurisdictional plan, it had 12 overall initiatives contained with it in the entire booklet. The top 5 ranked in that cost benefit review are a regional hazard mitigation public outreach strategy, a community wildfire protection plan, a countywide emergency shelter capacity and operational assessment, extreme heat incidence response and illness prevention plan, and the implementation of the Olympia sea level rise response plan. We've talked primarily about the core plan, so we'll shift focus a little bit to the Thurston County Annex specifically. Just like the core plan had a work group that informed development, the Thurston County Annex had a planning team that included representatives from emergency management, geodata, CPED, et cetera. And so Thurston County's Annex, it uses the same hazard profiles. It's affected by the same swath of hazards, but there are additional mitigation initiatives that are specific to unincorporated Thurston County and our agencies. So there were 16 of those, and the top 5 ranked are structural ignition prevention within the wild and urban interface, county landslide hazard maps and regulations, the ongoing involvement in the National Flood Insurance Program community rating system, data collection of incident losses and costs for repetitive loss studies, and then the Thurston County Shoreline Master Plan, stream bank, riverbank protection. So what happens next? They're wrapping up their review. They're hopefully going to get back to us this week with approval from the state and FEMA. And then in February, we'll bring it back to you for adoption. And then beyond that, we're going to keep the county multi-jurisdictional work groups kind of going to perform annual reviews to monitor and document progress. And within that, for the different mitigation initiatives, groups are kind of beginning to work on their own to see which initiatives will happen first and how they'll be implemented. So that's kind of a summary of what's in the plan, what we think is most important for you to know, and what happens next, and happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Mejia?
I have a question. We had a presentation by Dr. Yes, thank
Board
you.
of Health.
Yes. About the, and he was advocating for the extreme heat incident. And so I'm wondering, based on what his request was and kind of how it was rolled into this.
Yeah, so he worked with TRPC to help develop that initiative. There is some movement on that. There's a meeting being scheduled in the next month or so to kind of look at next steps for that, and partners. We want to make sure that we're getting all partners that would be involved, not only in planning, but in the actual response. So that's kind of, there is motion on that, movement on that, and those are kind of the next steps for that.
Because I know we got an email after that presentation about whether or not the board could fund in some way I guess this initiative. I didn't have that terminology at hand at the time, but to get it going quicker. So it sounds like that would be us picking up that one and finding money for it out of the top 5 that you have listed on that slide. Is that kind of how it's set up? There's different projects, and that would be one of them, but there's no funding set aside for it at this point.
Correct. There's no funding set aside, and resources could mean staff time, right? It doesn't necessarily mean there needs to be a dedicated pot of money to a specific initiative. It's gonna vary with the work group that is developing and being led. out of that comes what's next, right? What will happen? Do they need to hire a consultant to write it? Can it be done internally? All of those kind of aspects to fulfill that initiative will have to be worked out. And so the funding for it is nuanced, you know, it could be minimal or it could be expensive, so, yeah.
And
So,
for the
don't know yet.
Board of County Commissioners to fund it, it should come through your budget process.
Commissioner Edwards,
This does not replace the budget process.
do you have questions? You're unmuted.
Yes. By any chance, is there any way to include mitigation planning for flooding having to do with the Alder Lake Dam in this process? Because it's kind of inevitable if they make a mistake.
We can,
Hey, good afternoon, commissioners. I just wanted to address both the last one and this one. I'll reiterate that these don't immediately, think of it more like going through the process of identifying what the gap, kind of a gap analysis is, as you're going through and identifying where we need to grow. And if there are funding initiatives that ultimately come out of this, or there's components that need funding, it would then flow, as to Robin's point, it then flows back into the budgeting process for future budget development. Additionally, there may be opportunities as we have developed our plan and worked with stakeholders, and especially community members as we've developed this plan. It gives us an opportunity to continue to integrate with them, develop specific response plans, and look at how we might also fund this, whether this would be a possible grant project or whether it would ultimately go into the biennial budget development in future years. And so there's a lot of opportunity here, but think of it more like a gap analysis for those future initiatives that we know we need to come up with a response to weather, a response to heat-related emergencies. But what exactly that fiscal impact is will come once that specific plan is developed. We just know that we have a gap that we need to proceed with. When it comes to funding, flooding, sorry, excuse me on that. When it comes to flooding, I would say that continued integration with Tacoma Power is going to be imperative, and development of those plans and procedures and coordination for when and if those incidents do occur is consistently on the radar for emergency management, especially in conjunction with CPED, looking at all of the warning systems that are involved and making sure that we have as much preparedness in place as possible. A large part of this is also mitigating disasters that have already happened, and that's the plan that you're seeing now, is looking at how do we identify and mitigate those flooding issues that we currently have, whether it's in the Chehalis Basin or whether it's along the Nisqually. All of those initiatives are imperative for us to plan into the mitigation plan.
Well, I guess my concern is that the FERC folks don't feel that they're obligated to address flooding at all. And I think this might be a good mechanism to protect our people down in the valley, because it's a reality. It has happened before. It's going to happen again. And by including it, or at least asking to include it, it would put it on somebody's radar that it hasn't been able to get on over the last, 6 years, or since the last time there was flooding down there.
And this plan, the previous plan, allowed us to develop a lot of those coordination and communication components. What's unique about that dam is the ownership and how
Commissioner Edwards just walked in the room, so he's hearing you.
I'll finish up my thoughts here. This ultimately gives us the vehicle, and I would point out that this has improved over the last 4 years. our coordination with Tacoma Power, pre-notifications, and making sure that we're identifying where those gaps are. And so this is a good vehicle to move some of those concerns forward. And I would say that based on past hazard mitigation planning and the process, we have improved a lot of that coordination. I think that you've been able to see and hear along the way in conjunction with Tacoma Power along the Nisqually.
Okay, well, it's good to hear we're getting better at something.
I didn't know if you had brought that up, and you brought that issue up King County.
No, not yet.
Okay, I guess we'll wait.
Something else?
No, that's it. Thank you very much.
You guys, you're done?
Yeah.
That's it?
Good job.
Well, thank you. Look, and we made our time, so.
Yep,
yeah.
and we got a nice thick, annex report to read.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ben.
Okay, we'll be.
Thank you.